Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. In the early hours of December 23, 2019, a 911 call brought first responders to an apartment in Kansas City, Missouri. Inside, they found 2-year-old Stevie Osborne unresponsive, her small body bruised and battered. The lively, cheerful little girl who had once brought joy to everyone around her was now at the center of a heartbreaking mystery. What went so wrong that night? How did things spiral from an ordinary evening to such a tragedy? As investigators looked into Stevie's final hours, troubling details started to surface, leaving her family heartbroken and searching for answers, and a community wondering how this could happen. Stevie Osborne was born on April 28, 2017, in Kansas City, Missouri, to parents Abigail and Gary Osborne. Her name carried special significance, honoring her paternal grandfather, Steve, and her late maternal aunt, Allison, who had passed away in 2004. Stevie grew into a delightful toddler, known for her sparkling brown eyes, strawberry blonde hair, and radiant smile. By the time she was 2.5, Stevie had already developed an incredible ability to spread joy wherever she went. Her cheerful personality and warm presence left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Described as a cheerful princess, Stevie brought light to even the darkest moments. Her daycare provider fondly recalled how Stevie's enthusiastic greetings each morning and heartfelt goodbyes at the end of the day made her job deeply rewarding. Stevie's Aunt Kimberly described her as pure perfection, often declaring her the prettiest girl in any room. Even as a toddler, Stevie showed a natural talent for singing and an immense love for her stuffed animals, particularly a blue and a pink sloth she had picked out during a shopping trip with her dad. Stevie adored Disney movies, especially Frozen, and had a special fondness for Olaf and Anna. She also shared a unique bond with her grandmother's cat, Charlie, and often amused her family by sneaking sips of her dad's soda or nibbling through the middle of his Jimmy John sandwiches. Stevie's father, Gary Osborne, had graduated from Park Hill High School in Kansas City in 2013. He began dating Abigail, a fellow student, shortly after his graduation. The young couple soon moved in together at Abigail's family home, where they began building their life. Abigail pursued a career in healthcare, working as a nursing assistant with aspirations of becoming a registered nurse. Despite their challenges, the couple seemed united in their journey, eventually marrying and preparing to welcome their daughter, Stevie. However, their story took an unexpected turn. Just 5 months after Stevie's birth, Abigail filed for divorce. Gary described Abigail as emotionally distant, making it difficult for him to understand their relationship's ups and downs. According to Gary, communication was scarce, and he often learned of issues only through her actions. Despite these challenges, Gary remained devoted to his role as a father, providing for his family and believing things were stable. After their separation, tensions escalated. Gary was blindsided when Abigail alleged he owed months of child support, despite him covering all household expenses while they were still living together. Shortly after, Abigail asked Gary to leave the house, claiming Stevie needed her own space. With nowhere else to go, Gary returned to his parents' home. The situation became more complicated when police officers served Gary with an emergency protection order based on allegations that he had attempted to choke Abigail years prior. The divorce hearing concluded swiftly, with the protection order against Gary dismissed due to insufficient evidence. However, the ruling came at a significant cost. Gary was barred from seeing his daughter Stevie for over 3 months, missing her first Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's celebrations. Finally, in January 2018, the court granted joint custody, though Abigail retained primary residence. Gary was allocated visitation every other weekend and 1 overnight each week, in addition to being ordered to pay $700 per month in child support. Meanwhile, Abigail had remarried a man named Corey. Though their interactions were limited, Gary acknowledged that Corey seemed more stable than others Abigail had been involved with. However, that marriage also ended in divorce. By early 2019, Abigail found love again. She reconnected with Joseph, a former classmate of both hers and Gary's. Originally from Seoul, South Korea, Joseph and Abigail's relationship quickly grew serious, leading them to move in together. December 19, 2019, started like any other day for Stevie and her dad. The toddler was brimming with excitement over an upcoming family Christmas party where she would visit her great-grandmother Virginia. Gary had no way of knowing that when he dropped her off, it would be the last time he would kiss his daughter goodbye. According to reports, on the night of December 21, 2019, Abigail, who was working as a critical care nurse at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, received a text from Joseph. He told her that Stevie was unwell and vomiting. When Abigail returned home at around 2 a.m. on December 22nd, she found Stevie as Joseph had described, sick and lethargic. Joseph claimed that Stevie had tripped over the family dog and hit her head on the tile floor, resulting in a visible bruise on her forehead. Later that day, Stevie attended the family Christmas party, but her condition caused concern among relatives. Her great-grandmother shared photos from the gathering, showing Stevie sitting on Abigail's lap in pajamas, her face noticeably pale, with visible bruises on her forehead. Despite working in critical care, Abigail failed to seek medical attention for Stevie. Family members who attended the party observed Stevie vomiting repeatedly and noted multiple bruises around her forehead and ears. Disturbingly, Joseph insisted on being the only one to change Stevie's clothes after each bout of sickness, refusing to let anyone else help her. On December 23rd, while Abigail was at work, Joseph called to inform her that Stevie had fallen out of bed and was unresponsive. Abigail instructed him to call 911, which he eventually did. Emergency responders arrived at the Wild Oak apartment complex and found Stevie in a dire state. She was covered in bruises and unresponsive. Paramedics rushed her to Liberty Hospital, where she arrived in cardiac arrest. At the same time, Gary was at work when he received the call every parent dreads. He raced to the hospital, covering the 30-minute distance in just 15 minutes, as Abigail's increasingly frantic updates hinted at the severity of the situation. In one call, she told him, "I don't know what's going on. I think she's dead." Upon arriving, Gary's desperation to see Stevie led to a misunderstanding with hospital staff, who initially barred him access and involved law enforcement. Once police confirmed his timeline and intent, it became clear that Gary was simply a distraught father. Stevie's injuries were catastrophic. Doctors at Liberty Hospital identified skull fractures, severe brain trauma, and abdominal injuries. Emergency surgery was deemed necessary, and she was transferred to Children's Mercy Hospital for advanced care. Tragically, Medical assessments revealed that Stevie had been deprived of oxygen for over 20 minutes, leaving her in critical condition. The bright, joyful toddler who had once lit up every room now faced unimaginable odds. The attending neurosurgeon delivered a devastating assessment to Gary and Abigail, stating that Stevie's injuries were almost certainly not accidental. The severity of the trauma pointed to intentional harm inflicted by someone else. Due to the troubling nature of her condition, medical staff at both hospitals filed reports with the Missouri Department of Social Services Children's Division, initiating an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Stevie Osborne's care. During questioning, Gary maintained that Stevie appeared healthy and free of bruises or marks when he dropped her off the night before. Family members who attended the Christmas party, however, shared their growing concern for Stevie's well-being. They reported that she appeared lethargic, with visible bruises and persistent vomiting throughout the event. Despite their inquiries, Abigail dismissed these signs as typical childhood clumsiness and a mild illness. The Children's Division spoke with Abigail, who recounted the text messages she had received from Joseph regarding Stevie's condition. She admitted to seeing Stevie unwell when she returned home at 2 a.m., yet she failed to seek medical attention, a glaring oversight for someone trained as a critical care nurse. When asked why he had been the only one changing Stevie's clothes at the party, Joseph claimed it was his way of taking responsibility for her care. However, he later admitted to an argument with Abigail after the party, which escalated into physical violence. Abigail confronted Joseph about Stevie's bruises, which led to a heated altercation. According to Abigail, Joseph pulled her hair and threw her onto the bed while she was holding Stevie. Although she considered calling the police, they ultimately decided Joseph would move out in the following days. Joseph admitted to the physical confrontation, describing it as an accident he never intended to escalate. He also attempted to shift suspicion onto Stevie's paternal grandfather, alleging that the bruises on Stevie's abdomen might have been caused by him. However, no clear reasoning or evidence supported this claim. As Stevie lay in the hospital, Gary visited her bedside, holding on to hope. He kissed his daughter and reassured her that she would be okay, clinging to the belief that this ordeal might result in him gaining sole custody of Stevie. Despite the heartbreak, Gary tried to see a glimmer of positivity amid the chaos, imagining a future where Stevie would never have to return to Abigail's home. While doctors prepared for surgery, they delivered devastating news to Gary. Stevie had suffered such severe trauma that her brain was no longer communicating with her body. Her pupils showed no reaction to light, a key indicator of brain death. Despite this grim prognosis, the doctors planned a last-ditch effort to save her life through an invasive procedure called a craniotomy, where a portion of the skull would be removed to relieve pressure and allow access to her brain. Stevie, only 2 years old, was facing a surgery no child should ever have to endure. Gary watched helplessly as his little girl fought for her life, praying for a miracle that would bring her back to him. After Stevie was taken in for surgery, Gary and Abigail were escorted to a private room where they were met by a hospital chaplain and the surgeon. The somber expression on their faces said it all. The surgeon broke the devastating news: Stevie wouldn't be coming home. During the delicate procedure, her condition had worsened, and she went into cardiac arrest. Despite the medical team's best efforts with CPR and a defibrillator, they were unable to revive her. Stevie Osborne was pronounced dead at 1:28 p.m. on December 23, 2019, just 2 days before Christmas. Gary described being frozen in shock as he processed the tragedy. When he glanced at Abigail, he was struck by what he perceived as a cold, tearless expression. According to Gary, Abigail picked up her phone and, without emotion, told her mother, "You can tell everybody to go home. She's dead." An autopsy was performed on Christmas Eve, revealing the full extent of Stevie's injuries. They discovered bruises and contusions covering her forehead, scalp, upper lip, chest, abdomen, pelvis, hands, wrist, and legs. Internal injuries included hemorrhages in her abdomen, bowels, and between her skull and scalp. The conclusion was clear. Stevie's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was ruled a homicide. The criminal investigation began immediately and lasted until January 6, 2021. Joseph, Abigail's boyfriend and the primary suspect, had a warrant issued for his arrest. Upon learning this, Joseph took a final, irreversible step. At his father's home, Joseph ended his life in the bathtub with a firearm. According to Gary, the police viewed Joseph's suicide as a de facto admission of guilt and decided not to pursue criminal charges against Abigail. Despite this, the Children's Division report held Abigail accountable for negligence in Stevie's care. Joseph left a 2-page letter on his computer, which his brother found and forwarded to Gary. While Gary brought the note to the police in hopes of reopening the case against Abigail, he was told it wouldn't change the outcome. Authorities had effectively closed the case. In the letter written on Christmas Eve, Joseph discussed his inner struggles. He spoke of loneliness, self-destructive thoughts, and his belief that the soul transcends physical death. While he explicitly denied harming Stevie and stated that her death had no bearing on his decision, he reflected on his life with a sense of resignation. Using the metaphor of an hourglass, he described how it felt as though his time had run out. Joseph also grappled with his mixed Korean heritage, expressing frustration at the discrimination he had faced throughout his life. He made a final request for his ashes to be scattered worldwide by a friend. However, Gary remained unconvinced that Joseph was solely responsible for Stevie's death, if he was involved at all. Gary believes that critical red flags were ignored during the investigation, and that Joseph's death was used as a convenient way to close the case. Authorities cited the bruising on Stevie's ear cartilage as evidence that only a man could have inflicted the injuries. Gary felt abandoned by the justice system, often left in the dark about key developments in the case. Looking back, Gary expressed deep regret, saying, "Everything was good before we got married, but I was very young and very stupid. I hate to say it, but at the time I was in love and I ignored so many red flags. Now I look back and think, if I had noticed those things, maybe I could have saved Stevie." Gary's pursuit of justice for Stevie was met with frustration and heartbreak at every turn. He called the victim's advocate nearly every day for 2 years, only to be met with silence. Unable to remember her name due to her lack of involvement, Gary decided to work directly with Clay County prosecutor Robert Sanders, hoping for some form of justice for his daughter. When Sanders requested a meeting with Gary and his family, they arrived at the office only to find 4 armed officers stationed outside. Gary's heart sank, knowing the news would be grim. Inside, Sanders bluntly told him, "It's not illegal to be stupid. It's not illegal to be a bad mom." Gary was outraged, convinced that if Abigail faced a jury, they would see her complicity in Stevie's death. The prosecutor, however, dismissed Gary's pleas, saying, "We got the guy that hurt your daughter," referring to Joseph, who had taken his own life. To Gary, this was no justice at all. There had been no trial, no conviction. The lack of justice for Stevie was compounded by minimal media coverage, which further silenced her story. While Abigail avoided criminal charges, the Children's Division investigation brought consequences. Abigail faced the risk of losing her nursing license in Missouri. In response, she filed a civil lawsuit against the Children's Division and its director. Before the trial, the Children's Division prepared extensive evidence, including medical reports, autopsy findings, and testimonies from investigators and medical experts. Abigail, on the other hand, offered little in her defense, relying on testimony from family members and herself. The trial, held on March 7, 2023, revealed troubling contradictions. Abigail's stepmother claimed she hadn't noticed any bruises or illness during the Christmas party, contradicting reports from other family members and her own prior statements to the Children's Division. Abigail testified that Stevie had vomited multiple times and admitted she considered the possibility of a concussion but chose to treat her daughter with Dramamine and Sprite instead of seeking medical care. When questioned about Joseph's anger issues, Abigail admitted he would often lose his temper, even punching a hole in a door. Despite this, she left Stevie in Joseph's care rather than placing her with Stevie's great-grandmother Virginia, citing concerns about the elderly woman's ability to care for a sick child. The testimony of a pediatric specialist was pivotal. She testified that Stevie's injuries were far beyond normal childhood bruises and consistent with child abuse. She pointed out that the bruising on Stevie's forehead was indicative of severe intracranial bleeding. Given Abigail's medical background and the visible signs of Stevie's deteriorating condition, she concluded that Abigail had failed to protect her child and had exhibited clear medical neglect. In the end, the court ruled that Abigail had been negligent in protecting Stevie and responding to her medical needs. The evidence showed she was aware of Joseph's anger issues and the danger he posed but still left Stevie in his care. Based on this, the judge denied Abigail's appeal to remove her name from the Central Child Abuse and Neglect Registry, a decision that affirmed her culpability, even if it stopped short of criminal charges. Family and friends came together at Park Hill Baptist Church in Kansas City on Saturday, December 28, 2019, to honor the brief yet impactful life of Stevie. The service, funded by Gary's Workplace Trauma Support Fund, was attended by co-workers and close family. Despite his lingering doubts about Abigail's involvement, Gary decided to allow her to attend the funeral, recognizing that if she were innocent, Stevie deserved to have her mother present. This decision was met with mixed emotions, as many family members were grieving and angry. Abigail shared heartfelt words at the funeral. She then described Stevie in touching detail, celebrating her unique personality and the joy she brought to those around her. From Stevie's adventurous spirit at the park to her comforting nature when others were sad, Abigail painted a vivid picture of the little girl's vibrant essence. With Gary managing the funeral arrangements, he entrusted the burial to Abigail. However, he was devastated to learn, hours after the fact, that Stevie had been buried without his or his family's knowledge. Abigail had failed to inform them of the burial, effectively excluding them from being present as Stevie was laid to rest. Determined to seek justice for his daughter, Gary launched a GoFundMe campaign with two key goals: securing legal support to hold all responsible parties accountable and creating a lasting memorial for Stevie. The fundraiser had raised $4,178 of its $50,000 goal, far short of what was needed. Gary's plans included transforming Stevie's resting place into a serene and beautiful tribute and purchasing a memorial bench. In his GoFundMe statement, Gary expressed his resolve to honor Stevie's memory with a fitting tribute. Stevie's memory shines brightly in my heart, but her resting place doesn't yet reflect the vibrant spirit she was. I'm determined to give her a headstone that captures her essence, a tribute that solely focuses on her, free from any painful associations. Gary remains unwavering in his fight for justice and remembrance, ensuring that Stevie's story will not be forgotten. Through his dedication, he seeks to create a legacy that celebrates the light Stevie brought into the world while holding those responsible for her tragic loss accountable. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.